All right, guys, we are live. Hi, everyone. Today I'm with Dave Conley. Hi, Dave.
Hi, Audrey.
How are you doing?
So good. How are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you so much for your time. I'm really excited. Thank you guys for joining today's interview and welcome to Find Your Superpower, Hack Your Body and Mind to Become Unstoppable. So today with Dave, we are going to talk about rebooting after crisis. It's a good time to talk about that now, but also with Dave is going to talk about lessons learned from midlife that apply to every day and everyone. So before we start into the midlife crisis, Dave, can you tell us about your story? You have a very interesting story,
Thank you.
and so please share that with us.
It has been an interesting life, I do say, and I like sharing it with other people and helping other people through my lessons learned. So I am an expert in rebooting your life, absolute expert. And I didn't realize this until about midlife. But I recognized it in my career. I started as I was flailing around in college, and a friend of mine said, "Hey, why don't you come? Get, my company's hiring stupid. You're clearly that. So come on down and interview." And I did, and I started my career as a project manager at AOL, and I was really good at it. And I ended up being in charge of the mainline clients, all those CDs that most of the planet got, the software on those things. And so my very first job out of college was to get 32 million people on the internet for the first time. Loved it, right? An amazing job, an amazing opportunity, and a once in a lifetime opportunity. Yet I also recognized that I wanted to do other things. So I kept on bopping around the company in different capacities. I started in project management, and then I went to quality assurance management, really checking things out. I went into hardware and games and even satellites, all sorts of different aspects that had nothing to do with my field. I did development management, and then I joined the government, and I kept on just like going and going and going. And the running theme is that I was really good at change. And then crisis. There was certainly crisis at the dot-com bubble burst and really adjusting to that. Crisis at 9/11.
Mm.
And then I was married for 13 beautiful years, and my wife unexpectedly passed. And it's not unusual for people to lose someone, but it is unusual for someone that young to just disappear from your life. And that's when I started my journey of really rebooting from ground up. Over the years, I'd put so much time and energy in my job that I'd lost myself. I weighed 330 pounds. I
Wow.
was smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. I hated what I was doing at the time in tech management. And through that process of really finding and loving myself as much as I loved my wife, Carol, I rebooted my life, transitioned into becoming a health and wellness coach as I lost 150 pounds. I transitioned, and now I'm a speaker and an author, and I specialize in rebooting one's life, particularly at midlife, particularly at crisis. And we're all in crisis now. So that's my background. That's my story.
What a wonderful story and so inspiring, right? Because we all have this time of our life
Mhm.
where we have those crash, something happen, and then things go wrong. So that's so inspiring to see who you are now, right? Coming from so far. So Dave, you're talking about midlife crisis.
Yeah.
So what is a midlife crisis?
Mm. Thank you. Other than like boob jobs and nose jobs and running off with so it's there's some really key qualities to midlife crisis. One is internal and external changes seem to be happening to you, and your life shifts completely out of control. So, what do I mean by internal and external changes? The internal changes are often health related. You put on weight that it's harder to take off. You often have your first chronic illness, maybe medication that you're on for the first time. Um, and more often than not, all the people that I talk to say the moment that they needed reading glasses was the moment where they said, "Oh, I'm old." Now, external changes happen too, and they just happen to happen at this same time. Things like your job typically tops out unless somebody dies or you get some sort of other magical thing happening. You're sort of at the top of your career field. If you have kids, they get much more independent. They might even move out, right? And this is also the point where a lot of people look at their relationships and wonder if this is the relationship that they want for the rest of their lives. Either they want to change it with the person that they have, maybe change it completely, but it's rare for somebody to say, hey, everything's great. Um, the very last quality is clear recognition that this is a finite life and that you want to leave legacy, that you want to say, I was here. No matter what anybody believes as to life and life after death, this period of time will end. So recognizing and saying, holy crap, I'm going to die. Is this what the hell I want? Is this what I want to? So I believe all of those things, that's the energy of change. And when that gets misdirected, where you feel out of control, then it's the boob jobs and the nose jobs, right? You just, you lose control, and it's called a crisis. And
Yeah.
it's called a crisis. It's often joked about, right? I mean, we're laughing about it because we see it. So that's what midlife is.
I can totally relate.
Right?
Not about the boob job. I was thinking about though, but
Right?
I can totally relate it. Job, relationship,
Yeah.
death of scare of death,
Yeah.
and scare wanting to leave a legacy. Oh my gosh, you just named it. Everything. It's just wow. I just have a big aha moment. So tell me now something good, Dave. What does a good second half look like? Because there's
Mm.
some lights in after the tunnel.
I think this is the greatest time of life. It has certainly been the greatest time of life for me, not without difficulties and hardships. And I know I'm a little bit different in that I do make change. And I was in therapy for a real long time. And as I was drawing an end of therapy, my therapist looked at me and as we were sort of like saying our goodbye, she said, I've never met anybody in 30 years of being a therapist that could just decide something and make it happen in their lives. Most people get trapped in that world of like inaction. And so I know I'm blessed that way, but it also comes with some heartache. So some really great things about this time of life is, and what was really great about living the second half is really knowing deep down inside that you have choice, you have agency, and you do have legacy, and they all go together, right? Choice is saying that you always have choice. You just need to expand your menu. Most of the people that I work with and talk with, they get in this world of the can'ts and the won'ts and they don't because of something else. But you're in charge of you. Nobody else is in charge of you. No one else. You are responsible. So really recognizing that you have choice and it's your responsibility. You're the one who has agency. Those things get lost. And then there's legacy. I, I no matter what anybody might think of the guy, I was really inspired by a talk that Jeff Bezos from Amazon gave a few years ago. And he talked about it in the context of business, but I turned it onto my life. He talked about living regret free. I'm sorry, he talked about like making regret-free decisions, and he put it in this context of business, right?
Yeah.
I took it as like, I'm going to live a regret-free life, right? And he said that regrets were just delayed decisions. I'm like, let's think about that for a sec. If a regret is a delayed decision, it just means that you can always change it. You can always choose differently. It is your responsibility, the choice, the agency. And the only time you really can't take that back is when you're on your deathbed, when it is too late, when you can't make that choice. And that's the legacy, living regret free.
Yeah.
The next part about living this awesome second half of life is where your mind, your body, your heart, and your spirit are all aligned to support your life, not the other way around. And it's often the other way around. And it gets this guilt energy that really drags you down. Here's an example. Yes, you can see this one all the time. I hear this one all the time. Is most people, particularly the high flyers that I tend to help realign, get all their job satisfaction or their life satisfaction by their jobs, right? They're an executive, or they're, like they're masters of their universe, and they're like really good at it, and they get money from it, right? Like we get a lot of stuff from our jobs. That's external, right? And then they feel guilty about not spending any time with their kids. And then they feel really guilty when like their kids are getting this more independence, right? And that guilt energy is really the dragging it down. When your mind, your body, your heart, and your spirit really loving yourself, really paying attention to yourself, you can give so much more to those that you love, so much more to your vocation, your job, your community, and ultimately your legacy at large. That's what's so awesome about this time, the second half. And something that I'm not only living now, helping others people live now, but also looking forward to the second half of life. I'm so excited about getting older. And I can't think of like a lot of people saying that.
I love it. I love it. And some people are just scared of growing older, right? I think it's so exciting. I call it growing wiser. Right? Because you just learn so much, and you realize that you want to leave a legacy, and you want to learn more. So Dave, I love what you just said. Can you give us a couple of tips about how you can make that second life better? I mean, I'm just entering my life crisis. I'm 40. So I have another question before you answer that one. Can you have, I was just saying, I'm 40. So does it mean, does it have to be like at 40, 45? How old people are when they go into the life crisis? Is it 30, 35, 40? Is there a number on that?
There is. Actually, there was a study that just came out, and believe it or not, it was from economists, because economists look at how people think, because how you think and how you act and how the economy runs, they're all together, right? So Bureau of Economic Analysis came out with a long-term study that looked at every single country on the planet. And it turns out that at midlife, there is this low point where you really think your life sucks. And that universally, across the board, across countries and cultures, happens about between the ages of 39 and 52, right in there. So if you're in that spot, and it just so happens that after that age, most people just tend to hockey stick up and think like the rest of their life is kick ass. And like, yes, it is. And there's also some things you need to do in order to make sure that that rest of your life is totally aligned and that you have that agency so that you keep on doing what you need to be doing. So is there an age to it? Typically 39 to 52. And like we talked about, like whenever you're in crisis, there's crisis in everyone's life. There's always time to learn, how, and it's never too late. So if you're outside of those ages, learn now, or learn now, start now, and keep it for life.
Great, love it. So great, my life is just getting better from now.
Right.
So how can we make? Do you have any tips, Dave, to make that second part better? To improve a life, a second part of a life, a crisis.
Totally. There's very practical items, probably things that your audience are going to probably have heard 1,000 times. And then there's really changes in thinking that come from multiple disciplines. Those two things become your superpower, the practical and the changes in thinking, because the practical has to evolve. The practices, I use the acronym SEEN: sleep, exercise, eating, and noticing, or mindfulness and meditation.
Yeah.
And those four together, if you got those down, everything else gets really much easier in your life. Sleep, really straightforward. For almost everyone, it's between 7 and 8 hours every night. Eating, it's eating well and eating well for you. And we can talk a little bit about that because we're all a little bit of a precious snowflake where it comes to eating. And I have this very strong opinion on how to eat because I've also lost 150 pounds, and I've often helped my my folks lose over 100 pounds and keep it off. Exercise, uh, again, exercising for what's right for you, and mindfulness and meditation, being in the present, not living in this past, this ego-driven past where you're beating yourself up. You can't change anything, or speculating in the future. It's the right here, right now. And I don't mean live for the moment because tomorrow you might die. I think that's reckless. It's really loving yourself in the moment and taking the right decisions in the moment for you. So, seen, sleep, exercise, eating, and noticing.
Great. So I'd like you to go a little deeper in the eating.
Yeah.
And just because you changed your life and
Yeah.
you helped so many clients. So what do you mean by eating?
Thank you. That goes right into the changes in thinking. And I really see as three things that will benefit you for the rest of your life. Becoming a citizen scientist, really learning about not only choosing what your health goals are, but also really deep diving and learning about those things and conducting experiments on yourself. Questioning conventional wisdom, I think it gets really easy, particularly with social media, to say, this is the one way to do something. You must do this and you will get what you want. That's just bullshit. And then remaining curious. That sort of sweeps up the citizen scientist and the conventional wisdom. Yet I've often found that people get stuck in this one way of doing something, and we don't work that way. Our bodies get very, very used to doing the exact same thing over and over and over. And once it gets stuck, it gets stuck. It's because it's easy. Evolutionarily, it's easy. And your body really does go for easy when it gets down to it. So remaining curious about both what's going on for you and what are changes that you can make. So let's use eating as an example. And I'll put it in the context of an example that I'm working on right now. And that is my intention for this year was working on my heart. Is working on my heart. It's both metaphorical and physical. And it turns out they're very much the same, but that's probably its own episode. Have your physical heart and your loving heart tied in between, tied between the two of them. Specifically, I was looking at changes in my practices, changes in my supplementation, changes in how I was eating, and exercise. So I was really looking at everything, and also working on how I sleep, because frankly, if your sleep's screwed up, you can't do anything. Like I have met more overweight people that have funky, like you can't lose weight. It's really sleep. You've got to get that nailed.
Yeah.
Working on my heart. So I tried a bunch of experiments, and I have a number of them going on right now. One of them was really making contacts, both Eastern and Western medical and health providers, and other citizen scientists, like just nerds like me, and just health and wellness professionals from a variety of careers and backgrounds, and really reading and understanding and learning about what's going on. What are the causes of heart disease? What are the things that are heart disease? What's the conventional thinking around heart disease? And what are the things that everybody believes but may not necessarily be true. I even dove into PubMed. I talked to leading scientists in this field. Turns out if you just email somebody and say, hey, this was interesting, they'll answer you. So really just like taking it on and just learning about it. So I switched up my supplementation. I'm trying out some different things for me. I ran a bunch of blood work in order to see what was going on, worked with professionals in order to interpret that blood work, questioned conventional wisdom on what cholesterol was all about and what that had to do with heart disease. And it turns out not a whole lot. We all think that there's been years and years and years of like cholesterol is the killer. It's not. And so that was a conventional wisdom thing that was just like, oh, well, turns out that it's not really correlated. And then finally, really looking at how I was eating. And this is where we're special snowflakes. And so I got, again, super nerdy. I got a continuous glucose monitor installed in me, right? Like I actually had like a piece of equipment installed in me. I'm scanning my arm in order to see how food affects me. How you manage weight is a hormonal response. Because calories are just a blunt instrument. And if you're tracking calories, it doesn't make much sense. And then it simply doesn't. And the reality of it for us is that we are hormone machines. It drives so much. And so putting in a glucose monitor was seeing how I was hormonally doing things. I hear this conventional wisdom that there's one way to eat. Again, bullshit. Because of my microbiome, my genetics, my activity in my day-to-day environment, because of how I grew up and how I treated my body being 330 pounds for decades, means that I can eat exactly what maybe you or anybody else might eat, and I will not reach my health goals. And so, like, if you say that there's only one way, there's only keto, there's only Mediterranean, there's only high fat, low carb, high carb, low fat, only vegan, only vegetarian, nonsense.
Yeah.
I mean, like there was this Netflix documentary on how veganism is for like elite athletes, and this is the only way to eat. And you look at the data, and I'm like, no, actually, it depends. It depends.
Yeah.
And so it's about being this curious citizen scientist. It's like, what works for you? What works for your life? What works for, like, I like keto, but it's a pain in the ass. Like you really have to pay attention to it. And it's like, is this going to work for me?
Yeah.
So this is what I mean by eating and eating well, and how that works for you. There's not one way, and change how you think about it.
Yeah, I love that. And I definitely agree that there's no one size fit all, right? We're a different person. I'm different from you. You are different from someone else. We cannot fit the same diet. And we have history, different sex, different habits. And what works for one person doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for another person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I love that. And sorry, I just got confused because my dog is snoring behind me. And it just like make noise. So Dave, back to middle crisis. And what do you see when you see people struggling through the midlife crisis? Are they a common challenge, common topic, common habits that you see on people?
I think I want to. The most common thing actually is one step before that. And that is getting at what you really, really want. Like, what do you really want? What do you want for yourself? What do you want in this life? Because if you don't have an idea of where, like my intention was like working on my heart this year, right? But it took a long time for me to figure out what I wanted. I had like a lot of wants in places that they didn't need to be. Like here's an example. Really wanting a relationship, a really big, deep, big relationship. I'm like, okay, that's great. But I don't have complete agency over that because you need somebody else to do that, right? So what are the steps that I'm going to do in order to really get at that big, deep relationship? And that's being really great with me, right? Really that big loving on me to actually bring that to someone else.
Yeah.
So the wanting of the relationship is causing all sorts of issues. So really the very first step. So here are some questions to ask yourself. And this turns out to be one of the biggest challenges people have, getting at what you want. Yet getting at what you want with quality. So stick with me for a moment here.
Yeah.
What do you want? That's your first question. That's cool. Great. But let's really dig into this so that we get clarity on it. Next question. Okay, so what's that going to do for you? Like, what's the consequence of that? So if you get what you want, like, so what? Like, what's it going to do? Now here's where it kills me. All right, so how are you going to know you have it? I mean, like when it gets down to it, like what do you want? What's going to do for you? But also, how are you going to know when you really, really have it? Then where do you want it? With whom do you want it? When do you want it? Get some like real shape to it. Now, this is the one that stopped me and stumps me, but it gets it so much. And that's asking yourself, what, if anything, might you lose if you get what you want? So if you get what you want, what are you going to lose? Like truly, what are you going to lose? And are you okay with that? Because the secret to that question is that gets at your limiting beliefs. And those limiting beliefs are those old programs that you learned as a baby, as a child, that says, okay, if you do this way, you're going to be safe, right? So when you're intellectualizing it as an adult and you do not have what you want, then that's just really simply is a limiting belief that is stopping you from getting what you truly, truly want. If you don't want it and you already have it, you don't have a limiting belief. If you don't have it and you want it, it's a limiting belief. So what do you want? What's it going to do for you? How will you know? Where, when, with whom? And then if anything, what are you going to lose, right? So here are the common things that I run into with people. They don't know. I can't tell you the number of times that I've asked somebody, "Hey, what would you like? Like, what would you like?" And I don't mean like taking a meal order. That's although that's a good analogy, because if you have trouble picking something off of a menu, you might have trouble picking something out of your life. When the stakes are really high.
Yeah.
Often people just don't know. They freeze up. This is the hardest one and the easiest, because if you don't know, then what you want is to know what you want. It's a meta level. It's like, know what you want. I struggled with this. It took me almost a year's worth of work of really asking this question over and over and over again to figure out what it is that I wanted out of my life. I would just sort of stop and stall and get, frustrated, and I would just get off and do something else. Or here's the one, the agency thing. We'll bring that up again because that's something that people throw in there when they think they know what they want. It's like, if you don't have actual control over it, then it's like, I want my kids to be happy. Well, you know what? Unless you're a sociopath, your kids are, yeah, of course, like you want your kids to be happy, right? But, you don't have any control over that. What you do have is, how are you showing up? How are you creating your life as an example to others? If you're trying to carry somebody else's water, even if it is your kids, that's a deep, dark hole that you're never going to get out. That drives you back into that guilt energy again.
Yeah.
Final thing is size. People just like people go with this huge thing. It's like, oh, I want this huge thing. I'm like, okay, cool. That's great. I'm with you. It sometimes it goes with the agency thing. It's like, I want world peace. I'm like, okay, unless you have direct control over world peace, then let's rethink this a little bit. However, if something is so big, then the question is like, what's the first step? What's the very first thing in order to get you on your path? Because as a lot of your listeners know, that the first step creates momentum, right? It's not that I want world peace. It's like, okay, how are the ways that I'm going to be showing up? Maybe if we're looking at systemic racism, which is like on the topic of probably everybody's mind right now, the world over. Like, what are the steps that I can control, that I can do in order to help a movement that is important and important to me and important to so many? It's not, I'm going to solve systemic racism. That's, forget that. It's like, what's the first step and what do you have control over? So these are the things that I see that the biggest challenges and the things coming at midlife is really just start with what the hell you like? What would you want? And that's where everything begins.
Love it. And I mean, as a nutrition coach, I remember learning at the beginning, choosing a goal and breaking it down
Hmm.
so easy that when you ask your client on a scale from 1 to 10 how easy it is, and if your client tell you 8 or 7, it's like, okay, let's break it down, make it even easier.
Yeah.
So I love that. Like first step, and
Mhm.
first step comes a second step and a third one. So I love how you put it together, how you framed it. Also, what I want to get back, it's about the limiting belief,
Yeah.
because this is something really huge, especially with social media today. Girls, I'm too fat, I can't do
Hmm.
that, I'm not smart enough. So it's so important, the word we tell ourselves, but also the word what we're listening to the other. I remember my big brother always was telling me, oh, you skinny, you skinny, you skinny, skinny legs. So, okay, so today I'm working to grow my butt because I know I have skinny legs, but right, I should get out of that box.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I'm a strong woman.
Hmm.
So, and we all have this belief from not being smart enough to getting that job, or not being fit enough to
Hmm.
go to the gym, or not being flexible enough to do yoga, and also in a professional life. So I just loved how you put it together, and
Mm.
just that you made it just easy to go through a middle crisis and just to shine and to
Yes.
thrive.
Go from crisis to kick ass. Go from a midlife crisis to having a kick ass midlife.
Love it. I love it. So, Dave, time is going fast. We're just having so much fun here. And I know you have a generous gift. Can you tell us a little bit about?
I one of the things I work on is sleep, and we mentioned it a little bit earlier on in the episode here. And truly, if you sleep is this shampoo for the brain, it regulates everything. And I find that a lot of people struggle with sleep, and it gets weirder as we get older. And so I put together a little a web page for everyone to go and really take a look at all of the things that you can do in order to help your sleep. And these are things that I do, things that I've tried, and things that I currently do in order to ensure that I sleep well. And that's the very first thing. If you dial that in, man, everything else gets much easier.
I love it. And I really love it because I just read that book about sleep, and it
Hmm.
made me realize how it's so important to get your hours of sleep. The reason you stress, the reason you cannot lose weight, and you
Hmm.
mentioned it before, right? If you
Yeah.
guys don't get you enough sleep, you cannot lose weight. How also you cognitive, your way, the brain work. So I'm
Hmm.
so glad you're talking about that. I was trying to get a sleep expert on the show,
Mm.
and here, Dave, I'm so happy you're talking about that, because trust me, after reading that book, I was like, wow, my bedroom now, I make sure the temperature is down, I close
Yeah.
my curtains.
Yeah.
There's so many tips, and thank you for sharing this generous gift, because sleep is so important. So guys, there's a button just underneath the interview. I definitely go and check it out, because sleep today is so important, and it's also free when you want to improve it. There's not much, right? It's things we already have on hands
Yep.
which we can make it better, and improving your sleep will improve your health. So I love your gift. Thank you so much, and I love the conversation, Dave. You're amazing. Thank you so much
Mm.
for your time.
Thank you, Audrey. I appreciate it.
Great. Guys, I will see you tomorrow with another interview. So have a great day. Bye.